All right, I'm hitting record. Hey, y'all, come on in, come on in, come on in. We've got none other than the Reverend Dr. Gerald Durley from Atlanta, Georgia, Pastor Emeritus, Reverend Dr. Gerald Durley. We are grateful to have him on this Black History Month, to have an ATL legend and a stalwart in the environmental and climate justice movement, as well as the social justice movement. Reverend Durley, it's good to be with you tonight.
Whenever I am with someone of your high esteem, who I look up to, I'm glad to be here, and all of those on the line, because we're living in a critical time. And as Dr. King says, unfortunately, we've got to be the consciousness of America again.
Yes, sir. Rev, it was you, and I tell anybody this in my origin story. I've got some great mentors in my life, and one of them is you, and it was you that said this. You said, "How can I preach to them in the pulpit and shout them in my pews, but they can't breathe in public?" Excuse me.
Bless you.
Excuse me. But they can't breathe in public. And at the time, I was pastor in Rush Memorial, and somehow that struck me even more to get involved in the things that was happening around me and the things that were happening around those that I served. And that had everything to do with the environment. And as I looked around in Atlanta, Georgia, and I looked at some of the desperate situations that we find ourselves in environmentally, I couldn't help but to get even steeper involved. And there was you, that was one of my mentors that came in and helped to steer me along in this journey. And I just want to publicly say I appreciate you. But also, I want to ask you, that was powerful for me, and it moved me to a point where I was quickened and I got involved. But where's your origin story, and how did you get involved in justice?
I think that for me, Michael, and I think back now, we never know a kairos moment when somebody, some circumstance, or some condition will prick our consciousness, our spirits, our soul, and most of all, our mind, to make a change. And I don't know if you really know that turning point. In my case, I think back now, the last thought on my mind growing up was to deal with environment, to deal with polluted waters. I could have cared less whether a polar bear made it to the next iceberg. It wasn't even in my thinking to be concerned about plastic in the ocean. In fact, I might have been a greater polluter than most of them. I was not concerned about how many gas miles my car consumed and these kinds of things. I thought those were for, in those days, we called them the tree huggers or the conservationists, and I labeled most of them into those that had enough leisure time to talk about the climate. After all, I'm a Black man. I'm concerned about police brutality, teenage pregnancy, crime in our neighborhoods, families being broken up. And so going down as you, preaching and teaching, that was my concern. But every now and then when you're on the Damascus Trail, something will knock you off your pony, and you've got to ask, what is it that I've got to do? In my particular case, as you know, I started with Dr. King in 1960. John Lewis was 20, I was 18. Andy Young was 28. C.T. Wow. Vivian was 34. Martin is just coming in there a little over 30. So I was just a teenager there in Nashville, Tennessee in 1960. And my goal in life was very simple. As most people, mine was pure. I wanted to play a little basketball and go into the pros, anything short of that, and also get a little education on the side. I was clear at 18. But things happen in your life that make a change. And so I went down, I'll never forget it. I left Denver, Colorado on the bus. And when we got to the Tennessee state line, the bus driver came to the back and said, "Sir, you've got to move behind that line." And I looked, I didn't know what he was talking about. He said, "You cannot ride in front of this line." And I was getting ready to challenge him. And two Black ladies said, "Young man, come back here with us. You're going to get yourself killed." I didn't know what he was talking about coming from Denver, Colorado. When I got to the bus station, I got ready to take a drink of water, and the guy grabbed my neck and told me, "You don't drink out of that water fountain. You drink out of this one." These are incidents in all of our lives, even those who are now in the movement for climate mitigation and climate change. Something will happen to change and change it. That happened, and I was very angry about that. I was confused. 2 nights later, this 18-year-old kid went down to Fisk University. And at Fisk University, 5 men walked in and said, "We're going to make a difference here in Nashville." Who are these 5 men? I didn't come down to Fisk to see men. I heard Fisk had some very intelligent ladies, and I was going to see the intelligence at that time to see how I could learn something from the intelligent ladies at 18. But when they walked in, there was John Lewis, there was Hosea Williams, there was Ralph Abernathy, there was Andy Young, and this guy named Martin Luther King. And they were talking about the Greyhound bus station and what it was at. And I went down there one time and got sloshed around with donuts and milk in my face. And I was at that moment, 1960, 63 years ago, into the movement, into the climate, into the movement about justice for all of us. Fast forward many, many years later, and I've stayed in the movement a long time, and the whole long story. But 10 or 11 years ago, I met a lady came to Atlanta, a white lady came to Atlanta, and she wanted to work with teenage pregnancy among young Black girls. And she was going out to the airport to meet with 30 evangelical pastors headed by Joel Osteen. And so I went out there with her. I didn't know her, but somebody said, "Go with her." I was chair of the Concerned Black Clergy here, and I went on out there, and I was just standing by the door. She was addressing about 50 to 60 white evangelical pastors that Joel Osteen had called to listen to this lady talk about teenage pregnancy among young African-American girls. And one of the privileged men said, "Who is that standing by the door? Is he your bodyguard?" Now, bodyguard, I didn't know I had a sign on me. I took offense. And he said, "Well, you can't talk here unless you have a PowerPoint." And this is what started me in the movement. She told me, "Don't say anything." I said, "No, no, no." The young man said, "Where's your PowerPoint?" And I pointed toward heaven and said, "My power doesn't run out." I went on and told about how this woman was making the sacrifice. She said, "I want you to meet my husband." Her husband was Ted Turner. That was Jane Fonda who had invited me. Wow. From Jane Fonda, I met a lady named Sally Bingham. Sally Bingham led me to Laura Seidel. The next thing I knew, I'm one of the few Black people in all of these white audiences understanding what climate change is really doing, understanding carbon dioxide and all of these things that were so foreign to me and my community. And I'm saying, once again, when you don't know, you can't really address issues. And the next thing I knew, I was involved with Interfaith Power and Light, and then became chair of the board for 7 years. And then met a lot of folks. But the whole idea was certain things happen in your life to make a difference. And that's how I got into it. So now, after 11 years, working with ministers, working with even social workers to understand and tying in with the civil rights movement because everyone has a constitutional right to clean energy, clean air, the same way we had a constitutional right to vote. So many of the things that I learned in the movement, I try to apply today, and how to move it up to a priority. And particularly with us, because we in underserved communities and poor communities, we suffer more and we pollute the least. So that's why and how I got into it. That's kind of my story of how I got into this. And for the last 11 years, really involved. And mine has been to encourage even pastors, if they want to save money, how to move into alternative energy, such as solar, so they can use the money that's been saved to do the outreach programs. And so it keeps expanding, and I think we're getting a little traction now about it. But we in our community, we're so involved with survival every day. I remember in 1985, I was having difficulty trying to convince people at the church that we need to be concerned about this new disease called AIDS. Mm. But everybody, "Oh man, AIDS, that's for people who are gay and all that." We found out that it wasn't. So the same type of educational process that was used then, I think we have to use now in terms of what this whole environmental effort is doing to us physically, emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually. So that's how I've been into it, and that's what I'm about Dr. Malcolm?
You know, Doc, one of the things that really impresses me with you is your voice and you being able to articulate truth and power and the wisdom that you bring to conversations and dialogue. The importance of faith communities being involved in this movement. Can you talk about how important and the potential, I guess, of faith communities getting involved and utilizing their voices in the way that you utilize yours?
Well, I think it's critical because if we call or when we call ourselves Christians, followers of Christ, if we go to that Bible study every Wednesday night and sit and take notes and listen to the pastors on Sunday morning, and I could talk about other faiths, but we're talking specifically about the Christian church and specifically about those that you and I and others in our community have been called to serve. If we're talking from a Christian perspective, it's got to be a holistic perspective. What good is it for me to be spiritually grounded, solidly grounded, know every scripture in the Bible, I can quote it, my hermeneutics are solid, and I'm coughing myself to death. Right. I'm doing things to an environment that the Bible says in Genesis, the first chapter, God says, I'm giving you an earth and I want you to take care of it. He didn't say pollute it. He didn't say destroy it. So when you come back to the original context of, from the Old Testament and all the way through, it's always how God was talking about, we are mere caretakers. We're not care destroyers. So when you look at that, it ties directly into the impetus of those of us who have a moral, ethical obligation to fulfill God's commandment, to take care of my earth, to take care of my animals, to take care of my plants. And we've gotten away from that because of our own greed and our own need for comfort and satisfaction of sitting back. Oh, I don't need to do that. I'll do this. And just little things that we did. And over the years now, we've seen after the Industrial Revolution, what it's done not only to our community, but to the world in terms of all the cataclysmic kinds of efforts that we see. So consequently, the word of God and the church in particular has to be at the heart of changing the way that we treat what God gave us to live. Can you imagine? He gave us all the air we needed, all the water we needed to keep it, and everybody's drinking gallons of water now, but clean water, clean air, trees that would take the carbon dioxide out of the air. And then we didn't have all the carbon dioxide, but as the Industrial Revolution came, it polluted more and it made it more comfortable. We more and more and more. And now look at us. Greenland is 70% melted. The glaciers are melting at an alarming rate. Forest fires and wildfires everywhere. Several islands are already underwater and gone in the South Sea Islands. The coral reefs that give oxygen now, they're bleached. So all of a shark, see, we got to connect everything, Brother Malcolm, because all of these shark attacks, sharks are fine. Nothing wrong with a good old shark, but a shark, when their sonar system has been twisted because of a warming trend, we did that. The shark didn't do that. So they're turning around and doing different things, all kind of abrogations of what it is that we're tying into the animal world. Look at when we talk about, we throw the word around food desert. No, we're bringing that into being with droughts because of climate and floods. So can you imagine if we continue down this path, it's not inconceivable to me that in 20, 30 years, unless we keep the Celsius down to 1.5, unless we keep it down to 1.5, we are going to be fighting over a loaf of bread at Kroger's because the farmers cannot produce enough. We don't see that now because we're merely surviving. So that's why what you're doing and what you have been doing is so critical that we in the church begin to articulate this message.
Rev, I appreciate that. And y'all, this is the reason why you need to be with us on March 16th. Reverend Dr. Gerald Durley is one of our honorees. And we are gonna really just love on them, but have us a good time. And you need to be there to meet them and also love on them as well. Rev, let me ask you something. First and foremost, what does it mean for you to be an honoree for the People's Gala?
Well, I think, first of all, what it means to me in a very selfish way is that, wow, somebody thought enough or thinks enough of me to even honor me. Because people, as some folks say, people don't have to respect you. People don't have to do anything for you. But to do that, and when you said it, I was honored. And then the first thing I said, why? Why? Because all that I'm doing and others certainly are doing is what is right and what God has laid on my heart. And then to be respected and honored, it means a lot because there's nothing greater. And I played a lot of ball. Wait, let me change that statement. I play a lot of ball. I still got some jump shot. I might not shoot a 3-pointer, but I'm good at the free throw line and a layup as long as I don't have to jump too high. So, but when your teammates say, "Man, you played a great game," when you're honored among your colleagues, when you're honored among those that you respect and they respect you, to me it's a high esteem honor, and I'm so grateful.
Well, I appreciate you, Doc. I really, really appreciate you. Now, my second part of that question is, Doc, what is that song that's gonna get you out there on the dance floor and get you cutting the rug with us?
Oh, well, you know, that was when I was at Tennessee State in 19. But you know, you see, and you know my age. Do you realize that on May 11th, I will be on May 11th, I'll be 82 years old. And I got a t-shirt when I spoke at the March on Washington when Al Sharpton introduced me. I got a t-shirt made that says, "If I can, you can." And I was screaming on the mic, if I can stand it for 64 years, you can stand it for 64 minutes. If I can stand it for 60 years, you can stand it for 6 months. So when it comes to that, I think back in 1960 at Tennessee State, I was a little disc jockey on it. I'm going back to your question. I was a disc jockey about music. And, you know, that's when the twist was coming out. James Brown was just getting started and all this. And I was on the radio show, that little student radio, and I was called the Double D.
All right.
On the radio. And because my name was Durley, and I was from Denver, I was the double defensive, delectable, darling, dynamic, dangerous, devastating D. Coming to you here from Nashville, Tennessee. The big boss here with the hot sauce. We're going to stick and stay and never stray. We got something on the right-hand table by the Isley Brothers, and it goes something like this. Then, there's a little girl coming up. And my classmate was a little young lady named Carla Thomas from Memphis. And her daddy came out with a song called The Dog. And they tried to ban it down at Fisk. And Carla was there. We started as freshmen together, Carla Thomas. And so all kinds of music to get you out on the dance floor. I just wasn't
Carla Thomas an artist as well when she was Stax Music?
Oh, yeah, she sang Gee Whiz.
Yeah.
Gee Whiz. Now, her daddy was Rufus Thomas that came out with a song called Do the Dog.
Okay.
And, but that was the early version of twerking. And so
wow.
the dean and all of them said, don't play that on campus. But Carla was there with all of us, and I'll never forget when I was running there in office, I ran against for student government president John Ford, and Harold Ford was his brother. Harold was John Ford's campaign manager in 1963. We ran for student government, and I laugh at the Ford now. I say, "Hey, I beat y'all," and Harold, we laugh about it. But those were the times when there was a kind of, we understood what was our purpose, what was our goal. It was confusing. And I think what's really key that what you're doing now, we as Black folks have got to understand what made us and is making us and will make us strong is two words. We've got to learn that our ancestors did two things that we've forgotten. They knew how to sacrifice and risk. Think back to your granddaddy. He would sacrifice some stuff, but if it got funny, he'd risk it. He'd throw it all on the table. Yeah. And we got to go that. So now when I go to a campus or someplace and some students are supposed to come and they say, "We're going to come to the meeting, but we got to go to the sorority meeting." I tell them, "Go on to the sorority meeting. We don't need you anyway." Your priority is twisted. Do you go to, and I've been in a fraternity for 63 years. But if something came that's directly, negatively, disproportionately impacting the well-being of our people, physically and psychologically and spiritually. I tell the brothers of this great fraternity, I have to see y'all next time. And I'm not going to name the fraternity because it might be people on the call that might disagree with me.
But now you still ain't tell me what the song is.
I can't remember. There's so many songs when you're playing them. I tell you one of the big songs now that makes sense, that is really apropos now. And one of my favorite artists was Marvin Gaye. When Marvin Gaye came out with What's Going On, Mother, Mother, far too many of us are dying. And the words are just riveting.
Yes, yes.
And I think music impacts you. Some days you want to hear something that's upbeat and going. And sometimes you just need to lay back and listen to something that's mellow, something that's smooth, something that's, so to get out on the dance floor, it depends, because in my case, if the music got the bop, and I just kind of slowly go out on the dance floor. And you know, in those days, you could dance with somebody, you look them in the eye, and you had a little something going. Nowadays, they get on the floor, they might be dancing with you, and then they be looking all over, and they might be on their cell phone dancing and all this. So, so in our case, when it came out, and if she liked a certain song, and I just kind of move on out on the floor and get these little old bad knees to dance.
Yeah, I just think that's a good, great point.
So I don't know if that was a specific song, but I think each song depended on the mood at that time.
I understood.
Because see, James Cleveland could shake me up.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. At any point.
At one point, he used a song called 999, Just Won't Do. You got to run on to 100. And many times when I was tired, I said, I'm doing all I can. I throw him some James. He said, 99 and a half. Just won't do.
That's
won't
right.
Do. And that's what we've got to do. Go on for that 100.
I'll just add that.
I'm running, trying to make 100. 99 and a half. Won't do.
Won't do. You don't remember that song. See, you're too young to remember that song.
I remember it very well. We used to sing it. You remember I was raised in Pentecostal church.
Oh, Lord.
That was one of them we used to have to sing.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And you still, and look at you, you're still running.
I'm still running.
I think what we want to do there on the meeting that day is to get some folks running. You don't have to run the entire race, because you notice one thing that I've learned over life, what brings across, watch this, winning teams on the relay is that you run your part of the race and then pass the baton on. The baton that I was running with, I've passed it on to you. You pass it on. Those that will be in the meeting, how do you pass baton on? And guess what? When you're running on the mile relay team, you're running that quarter, I ran the second leg. And when you run, you've only got 15 yards to pass off that baton. So you got to make some decisions when you go. Don't just get on a webinar. Don't just go to a meeting because it's in a certain city, but know you got 15 yards to run your race and pass that baton on to the next person.
Yeah.
Oh, talk, Durley.
You're talking good, sir. You're talking good. Well, listen, Rev, I don't want to hold you too much longer. I know that you got to go ahead and get your night going. I have to do the same. But I appreciate you. I look forward to being with you. For everybody else, please go out and get your tickets. This is the last week. As of Sunday, you will not be able to get your tickets any longer. We need you to go on and get them. We're almost at capacity now. So we want you to come on out so you can meet Reverend Durley and meet all our other honorees. Rev, I appreciate you. I look forward to seeing you.
We don't want that was a song by Lou Rawls. You know, I love music. And there's a song by Lou Rawls, and we don't want the listeners and those of you who are getting ready to buy your tickets. We want them to get the tickets and it was called, and you don't want to, if you didn't get a ticket or you didn't get on or whatever it was, his song was, If I Coulda, Woulda, Shoulda. He said, don't say if I coulda, woulda. You got an opportunity right now today. Don't put it off, because I really want to meet you. We want to sit. And then I think we're going to have some Q&A where we can get into some real dialogue during this, man. I think that's what's so important. I'm running my mouth tonight, but I won't do it like that on that night. We want to say, how do I, what do I, when do I, and how long do I?
Yes, sir. Well, we appreciate you, Rev. And we'll chat with you later.
All right. Be blessed.
Look forward to seeing you.
All right.
Thank you. Peace, y'all.